Okay. Ops 29.0.0.
Alright, y'all should be able to hear everything now. You should be able to hear audio.
12 knots.
You should be able to hear the plane. Me.
11 knots.
Everything. Are y'all good?
11 knots.
Studio mode checkbox not checked. Configure virtual camera button. Start virtual camera checkbox not checked. Start recording checkbox not checked. Stop streaming checkbox checked.
12 knots.
Y'all should be able to hear it now. Let me see. Hey Google.
12 knots.
Set volume 7.
11 knots.
Hey Google. Watch BVI pilots on YouTube.
Peyton Herrick. Yes. Jojo Hughes. Here.
Alright, very good. Okay, good.
Ops 29. Microsoft Flight Simulator -1.30.12.0.
Alright, Joe, how's the cockpit look? Full screen. I think I got it on full screen. Is that full screen? If not, I can make it full screen. Are you seeing full screen?
$14 knots. 17 knots. 16 knots. 15 knots.
Right now, folks,
13 knots.
We are taxiing into our runway.
12 knots. 12 knots.
That's why you hear
Jojo Hughes.
11 knots.
Yes.
Alright, very good. And also, check this out, Joe. Look at the scenery on this. Watch.
12 knots.
That's outside the plane. Check that out.
11 knots. 12 knots.
Look.
11 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots. 13 knots. 15 knots.
Might stutter a little bit, but
16 knots.
it don't sound bad.
14 knots.
We are headed
14 knots.
to Rome,
13
Italy.
knots. 13 knots.
Jojo Hughes.
12 knots.
Yeah, I see vehicle moving pretty cool.
11 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots.
That number you're hearing it say,
13
it's,
knots.
it's telling you what the speed is. That's what you're
16
hearing.
knots. 17 knots. 16 knots. 15 knots. 14 knots.
Rook Talon.
13 knots.
TFM works with FS2020.
12 knots.
Yes, it sure does. Yep.
11 knots.
Sure does, buddy.
11 knots.
Taxiway F at KSDF.
We're at taxiway F at
11 knots.
KSDF at Louisville.
11 knots.
Taxiway F.
Taxiway at KSDF.
12 knots.
Taxiway at KSDF.
12 knots. 13 knots. 16 knots.
You're really going to like this in a
18
minute when we
knots.
take off, Lois.
17 knots. 15 knots. 14 knots. 13 knots. 12 knots. 11 knots. 11 knots.
Rook Talon. Need. Getting a new laptop soon hopefully, and maybe wanna get FS2020 if it isn't too expensive and if I don't have to immediately get PMDG to use it.
Well, let me tell you, I'll tell you this, Brooke. If you can fly, like I'm flying the 748 right now with AI plus TFM, a little bit of both. But it's, you know, it's doable. I'm doing a test flight right now. This flight that we're doing to, the flight we're doing now, it's just a test flight.
12 knots.
before I count this
13 knots.
as a real flight.
15 knots.
We're going to do it and see how it turns out. But
17 knots.
yeah.
19 knots. 20 knots.
Now, if you're wanting to fly
20 knots.
PMDG at some point, yeah, you'd need to buy it.
20
But
knots.
I can tell you that
20 knots. 20 knots.
FS Tramp supposedly works
20 knots.
with the planes now when
20
you
knots.
fly on 2020.
20 knots.
I didn't test that theory,
19 knots. 18 knots.
but I've been told,
16 knots. 16 knots. 15 knots. 14 knots. 13 knots. 12 knots. 12 knots.
Com 1:124.20 parking brake on.
Enter runway.
Delta Whiskey
Here
at
we go.
runway tree 5
1
left,
steps.
ready for departure, north departure.
New sub-objective. Align aircraft on runway center line.
Departure to the north approved. Cleared for takeoff runway tree 5 left.
Parking brake off.
Cleared for takeoff runway, tree 5 left BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Parking brake on. Parking brake off.
Here we go, Lois. We're getting ready to do it.
Eight knots ground speed.
Rook Talon. I heard TFM should be much faster than it has been. I don't mind flying using AI because I can't say I know all of the principles of flight even if I've got some knowledge.
Yeah, AI is not bad. It's not bad. It's doable, and I think it's good for starting out. If you're just trying to get a gist of things, and you just want to fly around and enjoy, going different places.
Four knots ground speed. At KSDF.
Eleven knots. 11 knots.
10 knots ground speed. Flaps 0. Parking brake on. Parking brake off.
Here
New
we go.
objective take off on runway.
Here we go, Joe.
2 steps.
30 knots.
30 knots.
47 knots.
50.
64 knots. 81 knots. 99 knots. 115 knots. 133 knots.
New sub-objective.
150 knots.
Rook Talon. Joystick L axis.
166
Does
knots.
it do all that by itself?
184 knots. 199 knots. Airborne. 214
Jojo
knots.
Hughes. We off.
We are off, and yes, it does. It does, Brooke.
New objective complete. Initial climb to 500 PAGL.
Gear up. Dot.
Louisville Tower
One
BVI
steps.
9er Delta Whiskey. Continue for north departure.
1,000 feet.
Blue Streak 5512. Follow the aircraft on final. Wind 255 at 6. Cleared to land runway 17 left. BVI 9er Delta Whiskey. Leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
Louisville Tower BVI 9er Delta Whiskey frequency change.
2,000 feet. Com 1:132.07.
Louisville approach BVI 9er Delta Whiskey is type Boeing B748 4 miles west of Bowman, 2,000 feet. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
All right.
BVI 9er Delta
West
Whiskey
clear
Louisville
transition.
Squawk Tree 072.
Rook Talon.
072.
So theoretically,
3,000 feet.
how much input would I have to give to the computer before a flight? Do I gotta
37.2.
configure everything?
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey radar contact 3 miles northwest of Bowman, 3,500 feet. Cleared through the Charlie airspace.
Cleared through the Charlie airspace BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Feet. 4,000 feet.
Jojo Hughes. BRB gotta run to town real fast.
You betcha.
Jefferson, Kentucky, United States, Eastern Standard Time.
Over Jefferson, Kentucky right now, folks.
2113 feet. 4892 feet ASL. AP altitude: 10,000 feet. 2031 feet per minute. Set autopilot altitude. Enter altitude: edit selection removed. AP altitude. Microsoft Flight Simulator -1.30. AP altitude: 38,000 feet. 250 knots indicated. 6,000 feet. Flaps 0. Spoilers retracted. 290 knots ground speed.
Generic November 40 Tree Delta Mike is passing 1,200 feet, climbing 4,000 feet. Generic November 40 Tree Delta Mike Louisville, departure altimeter tree 0.18, continue to Delta Quebec November as planned. BVI 9er Delta Whiskey, you are leaving my airspace radar service. Terminated squawk 1200. Frequency change approved.
Squawk 1200. Frequency change approved BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Com 1 colon
Indianapolis Center
124.77.
BDI 9er Delta Whiskey is type Boeing B748, 2 miles northwest of 6 Kilo Yankee 610,100 feet. Request
Rook
flight
Talon.
following.
Cool that it actually knows your airline.
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey,
Like it literally says BVI.
Squawk 7 tree 1
Yeah, you
tree.
can go in and customize it, make it say whatever you want.
Squawk 7 tree 1 tree BDI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Squawk 7313.
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey radar contact 2 miles northeast of 6 Kilo Yankee 611,300 feet. Altimeter tree 0.18.
Roger BDI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Indianapolis Center
Minimize
Skywest
UI panel.
3973 is passing
Button.
flight level 370, climbing flight level
Okay.
370. Skywest 3973 Indianapolis Center, continue to MTHEW as
We
planned.
got other traffic out here today.
United for contact Indianapolis Center on 123.925. Good day. One two three decimal niner 25 for United 4. FedEx 516 traffic is 1 o'clock 4 miles at flight level 370 generic. Report them in sight.
Okay.
Skywest 3907 tree traffic is 1 o'clock 2 miles at flight level 350 generic. Report them in sight. BVI 9er Delta Whiskey contact Indianapolis Center on 123.925. Good day.
Going to 123.9er 25 BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Com 1 colon
Skywest 3907
123.92.
tree traffic in sight.
Just fixing my mic here, guys. There we go. I will warn you, they've been doing internet stuff all day over here. Working on the line, stuff like that. So if it drops, I hope it doesn't, but if it does, I'll probably go over to, if it kicks off and I got to restart, I'll probably go over to P3D and fly my PMDG instead of the 20. I mean, 2020 is good. It's got the you know, the visuals, but P3D 5 got pretty good scenery too, actually. So I'm just letting you know what might happen and what we're going to do if it does. can look all the way around your cockpit. We got live traffic on and live weather.
Going to 135.575 BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Com 1 colon
Indianapolis Center,
135.57.
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey flight level 255.
Let's see where we are.
Louisville, Kentucky, United States, Eastern Standard Time.
Rook Talon. So how much do you have to set up for it to do this by itself? Like, do you just tell it where to go in the main menu and it will fly? Rook Talon. Or do you have to configure the CDU and manage the legs and all that?
No. No, you just got to go to your settings and put it all on easy. And then select,
124.225 BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
put in where you want to fly to.
Com 1 colon
where you fly from.
124.22.
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey
from
flight
and to.
level 295.
On the world page, and that's it.
30,000 feet.
And when you get in the cockpit, you do Control Alt X. That'll activate the AI, and off you go.
Thirty thousand 972 feet ASL, 31,000 feet.
BVI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Time en route to destination, 6 hours 40.
Indianapolis Center, BVI 9er Delta Whiskey flight level 310.
No recent message. 460. Line colon 248 at 149 knots. Gust at 0 knots.
Wind
Line
is
colon 249 at 149 knots. Gust at 0 knots.
249, direction 249 at 149 knots. Really windy up here.
32,000 feet. 33,000 feet. $34,000 feet.
.127.1 BDI 9er Delta Whiskey.
Com 1 colon
Indianapolis Center,
127.10.
BDI 9er Delta Whiskey flight level 345.
Pike, Ohio, United States.
All right, we're heading north.
35,000 feet. $36,000 feet. $37,000 feet.
BDI 9er Delta Whiskey traffic in sight.
$38,000 feet.
Honestly, I like 2020, but I think I'm going to switch over to P3D. I like flying it myself, and we don't have this plane on PMDG yet on 2020.
38,200 feet ASL.
But I wanted to show this to you guys. If you guys give me about 30-40 minutes, I'm going to load it on PMDG, and we're going to fly on P3D5. What y'all say? You guys down? And then we'll come back, okay? This is, I like being,
Ops 29.0.0
I
left
like
bearing.
where I can,
Start
you know,
record.
do,
Stop streaming.
do the
Checkbox
flying
checked.
myself. So give me a little bit, we'll come back and we'll do it. We're going to
Rogue
do it in
Talon.
P3D5.
Sounds good.
Because I like being in control, you know what I mean? I'm not knocking 2020, but you're not doing nothing. You just sit here and let AI fly it. So